As Namibia prepares for its upcoming general elections on the 27th of November, the role of politicians in promoting voting has never been more crucial. Now, with a number to influence public opinion and shape the future of the nation, politicians play a key role in encouraging citizens' participation in the electoral process. Now, their ability to engage with communities, address concerns, and inspire hope is essential in driving voter turnout and ensuring that all the voices of the Namibian nation are heard. Now, the significance of voter participation goes beyond mere numbers. It's a reflection of the health of our democracy. Now, politicians, as leaders and public figures, have the responsibility to foster a sense of civic duty among the electorate. Now, they must engage in a transparent and inclusive campaign that not only highlights the importance of voting, but also empower citizens to make informed decisions. Now, by advocating for voter education and accessibility, politicians can bridge the gap between the government and the people, promoting a sense of ownership and the responsibility for the nation's future. Now, I'm Lot Ndamanomhata alongside Peter Mbwele, our language interpreter for tonight, pardon me, and this is Situation Critical. Now, in light of this upcoming election, in today's discussion, we will focus on how politicians can effectively promote voting and encourage civic engagement. Joining us, our esteemed guest tonight is Dr. Phillip Santos, who is a senior lecturer in the Department of Journalism and Media Technology at the Namibia University of Science and Technology, as well as Naita Hishoono, the Executive Director of the Namibia Institute for Democracy, and finally, Dr. Marius Kudumo, a seasoned public policy analyst. Together, they will explore the strategies and initiatives that can be implemented to enhance voter participation and strengthen Namibia's democratic fabric. Good evening to all of you and welcome to the program.
Good evening.
It's quite a mouthful. Yes. Quite a mouthful. I don't know if there was a better way to try and make it much shorter. Okay, but Doctor, perhaps let me start with you, Dr. Santos. Now, being from a media perspective, what is the role of politicians, especially when it comes to shaping public opinion and more so encouraging voter turnout? And when you are answering that question, I want you to be cognizant of the fact that we have 91% in terms of eligible voters in terms of registration. It's something that we haven't seen in quite a while. What makes this election so different?
I think you've asked two questions now. The first one about politicians inspiring voters to participate, and then what makes the election critical. So I think I'll start with the first one. I think out of self-interest, politicians need to inspire voters to participate in elections and to do so in their favor. This is something that they must do by presenting themselves as the best representatives and the best, offering the best opportunities for the electorate in terms of whatever it is that the electorate aspire to see achieved in the next 5 years. And what makes the election special is not only the number of registered voters, but also the age group. The fact that there are many young people who are registered against popular trends of apathy among young people globally. In this particular election, the expectation is that going by the numbers of registration, young people will be participating in very huge numbers, and that's a very significant development.
Now, Naita, being that you are coming from the Namibian Institute of Democracy, what initiatives did you find really worth captivating in terms of encouraging people to go and register to vote this time around? I mean, the numbers have gone up, but should we be excited that they've gone up? But we have also seen it in the past. Doesn't necessarily mean when someone is registered, they are likely to vote. But from your point of view, what has been different in terms of encouraging people to register this time around to vote?
What has been different to encourage people to vote? The ECN, the Electoral Management Body, definitely went out and fulfilled its mandate to ensure that the information is out there via all different media channels, social media, conventional media, radio, road shows. Us as a civil society organization, NID, we went out of our way to ensure that at our university dialogues and community dialogues through our Namibia Needs Me project, that the young people are informed. It's a group effort. It was a group effort because you have the electoral management body on the one side, you have the NGOs, you have the politicians, you have different interest groups because you also have ratepayers associations and different associations at local authority level that want to encourage the people to go out and vote. And it's also a level of maturity of our country. Young people, they do engage via social media. They are interested in what's happening. And I think they do realize that if you're not engaged, if you're not involved, then you're standing on the sideline. So it's not one organization or one institution that can definitely be credited with this, with a high registration, is definitely the electoral management body, because that's anyway their mandate. And we work closely with them. The NID works closely with them. And I know that the colleagues at the ECN, they really went out and beyond to get the discussion going. And civil society organizations also went, like for instance, the queer community did a party called something like Karaoke Angels, and they invited their community to come and vote and said, it's not just about that you're registered, but that you really make sure that your interest and your issues are heard. So that definitely contributed to the high registration. What I'm getting from you, it seems to
be that there's a lot on the ballot this time around. But
yes.
Dr. Kudumo, I mean, from a policy point of view, I mean, do politicians have any role in playing to ensure that they remove those barriers for people to be able to vote and also to participate in the democratic process?
Yeah, they have a critical role to play. Like Dr. Santos have said, it's also about self-interest as well as in terms of governing. Because how do you govern if you are not elected? Therefore, if you are supposed to govern, then you must convince people to vote for you, and you must communicate effectively in terms of your policies and your strategies, and you must be able to understand the challenges that people are facing so that you can translate and convince them that you can address them. So it's two factors. If you don't do that as a politician, how will you be elected? Then secondly, if you are not engaging, how will you know what are the issues that you are supposed to address when you are in government? So they have a critical role to play.
Okay. Now, Dr. Santos, in terms of the effective communication strategies, in terms of this registration of voters now that took place in Namibia, is there something that you are able to pick out that they did so well and they did differently? I saw memes are flying all over now, TikTok, even the of the elders that you didn't expect them to be in TikToking, but it doesn't matter the different approaches that are being used to entice the young voters.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of factors. One is the ubiquity of communication technology, which is everywhere. As long as you have a message circulating somewhere, whether it's through mainstream media or through alternative media, digital media in particular, where young people are concentrated, the message will spread, and it will spread very, very fast. But I also think there are factors, driving factors, which have nothing to do with communication, which are the lived experiences of the voters themselves. In particular, if you look at the young population, they have many challenges. Unemployment obviously being the biggest factor. And then issues that arise from inequality, poverty, and other such factors are also drivers for participation and the desire to participate in. And I think also if you look at the global moment in which we are, there is a lot of activism by young people. You look at the what's happening at universities in the US vis-a-vis the conflicts that are going on across the world. There is just that wave of political awareness, political activism, which just tends to have this spillover effect, and social media are really a factor in created that domino effect across the world.
I think building on that is the situation that we saw in Kenya, this generation Gen Z, where they literally have no leader whatsoever. Young people are meeting on social media platforms. It's difficult to identify who specifically is a leader. And perhaps, Naita, you talked of the fact that you are giving credit to the Electoral Commission of Namibia. It's not very often that we see civil society doing that. You talked about that they did well. They went to a far-stretch extent. We were a bit worried about when the deadline was about to close because we had less than 900,000. And in the space of literally the remaining week, we are at 91%. Is this maybe a journey of many things to come? And can politicians possibly learn from this to work with civil society to see how they can better engage electorates?
Definitely. Everything we do in a country is a group effort. We are all sitting together in this boat. We are not separate from each other. And what the ECN did, they've been, from the start when the electoral calendar was launched, they ensured that there's consultation and engagement, and serious consultation and engagement. Every time they reached out to us, they said, you're our partners, we see you as credible partners to contribute to our work. Every step of the way, they took us along. Last week, they published a voters roll. So citizens are now able to go and see, is my name on the voters roll? From the start of the electoral calendar to every step of the way, we were taken along. And that is just an example for all the other government ministry, private sector, and for us in civil society, that when we work together, we do much better instead of when we work in isolation.
We can differ, but when things are very, very important, we always find a way to come together. Now, Doctor, in terms of public policy, how can it perhaps be shaped so that it's sort of in a way that it is for continuous civic education and engagement just beyond the election? Because it's okay to get excited. The elections are here. Elections come and go every 5 years. Now it's a presidential and national assembly election. But next year again, we have the regional and local authority election. Should we just be worried about the moment, or should we be thinking about the long-term plan?
Yeah, it's not only a long-term plan. It must be embodied in us. It must be part of us. Democracy is consolidated and strengthened by citizen participation. When you look into our Constitution, we vote to influence the composition and policies of government. So when you have voted, you have influenced the composition. The government that you have voted in is supposed to develop and implement policies. And these policies are coming from the life experiences of people, the challenges that they are facing. And therefore, it cannot be a matter of we voted and it's finished. We must also be active in the shaping of the policies, in the development of the policies. Because policies, public policies, are intended to address our problems or our challenges. And the policymakers do not have all the answers to our challenges. When we are actively participating as citizens, we are actually contributing to good policy making.
Okay. Now, you and Dr. Santos mentioned the issue of the self-interest. For the sake of our viewers, we're talking about self-interest. What does self-interest mean, especially to the electorate that might be watching right now?
Yeah, look, the issue is, why do you want to govern? Actually, any political party exists to seize state power, to govern one day.
So that is given regardless whoever is running for
So it is assumed that when you are governing, you are implementing your policies. You are shaping the value systems of society. Now, if you are not active in convincing the citizens, how will you govern? Because you have self-interest as a party, as an individual, to be in power. Now, if you don't do the work that are required for you to be in power, you are not going to be there.
So it's about ensuring that you have a self-interest, trying to ensure that they meet both ways with what also the population or the electorate is looking for. Now,
so it's just saying that you have a conscience and you have an understanding that I cannot become a government in a constitutional democracy unless it is through election. And I cannot be there unless I convince the voters to vote for me.
Okay. Now, let's talk about some of the key challenges that are facing voter participation in Namibia. I know we are excited again about the fact that the 91% in terms of achieving of statistics is a good thing, but over the trajectory since independence, it hasn't really been that good. But more so over when it comes to young people. Do we see something different this time around? We know we saw how the voter youth turnout in the US in the election in 2020. We see how they turned out in Senegal not so long ago. We see what the situation that is happening in Kenya, where they are simply saying we don't want violence. We're simply just showing our discontent as to how things are governed. And they are talking about not even prayers can fix a situation in Kenya. Is this something different that we are likely to experience in Namibia, Dr. Santos?
I think so. I think young people are motivated to participate in a very big way. I mean, not just as part of a trend, but also because of the exigent issues in the context in which they are placed, which I think provide the push factors for them to be actively involved in political processes. They have their own motivations, which have individual dimensions to them, but also a collective element to them. So there are problems that cut across all young people. As I said earlier on, unemployment is one of them. And this is a challenge that's going to stay with us for a very long time, because the work environment itself is also transforming globally because of changes in the economy, the nature of the economy, changes in the technologies that are coming on board, for instance, artificial intelligence and so on. So the precarity and vulnerability of jobs is going to remain a real factor. And that creates a restive situation among young people, because they begin to wonder what the future holds for them. And they will want to take part in processes, in social processes, where they think they can influence the direction in which society will proceed going forward, hoping to change that direction in a way that benefits them as a social group.
A social group. Now, talking about that, and perhaps maybe Naita, building on what Dr. Santos said, we know that approximately 901,326 voters are under the age of 42 out of the approximate 1.5 million. That's a big number. If you were a politician and you're watching, what would you be doing? How should you be addressing the concerns of young people?
Go to them, talk to them, engage them, hear what they have to say, make them part of your structures if they're interested and if they believe in your ideology and in your value system. Don't leave them outside. Have intergenerational talks. Learn to understand what moves young people. Include young people in the structures. Ensure that young people are part and parcel of the structures, and not just as a tick box and not just as a affirmative action policy, but as a real serious engagement. Because most people, we are all somebody's child. We all have nephews and nieces and children, and we all know young people, and we all know the best way to get people to understand people is to listen to them and to engage them and to ensure they are part and parcel of the structures. When you look at the party list at the conferences or at the congresses that all the political parties need to have, they need to ensure they're sticking to the SADC protocol that says we want 50-50 zebra-style list, which means men and women, and not just men and women, but also intergenerational. So don't just have your party list as male, female, but have it youth, elderly. Be inclusive of the different parts that society makes up. We are not all thinking the same. We are not all the same, but represent that in your structures, in your political party, and be inclusive as possible. Our former president always said, leave no one behind. That's what political party and politicians ought to do. Don't leave anybody behind.
Talking about the late Dr. Gengop, he once said, if you want to remove me from office, come and vote me out. Yeah? He presented opportunities. But building on that, perhaps maybe Dr. Kudumo, What can politicians do differently to to get rid of this issue of voter apathy? Because we are excited about the 91% voter registration. I'm worried more possibly about whether or not it will also translate into the actual voting, because they are excited. She's talking about they need to be included. The issue of 50-50, it's not an issue of just men and women, but also trying to ensure that they are part of that process. But we are not seeing so many. We have seen recently at the PDM, where we saw that the young people dominated that central committee, and it appears to be that no one over the age of 60 returned to that central committee. Is this a wave that we can expect perhaps going forward?
Possible, but we cannot predict with certainty. I think the issue is really understanding what are the challenges in society that need to be addressed, and also understanding that we are in a different context with its own challenges. To make it clear, 1989 election is about independence and freedom, or remain under colonialism. The choices were very clear. It's between these two. You have evolved. You are now 34 years as an independent state. And as you are evolving, the challenges are also evolving. And linking to what the others have said, no one understands an issue better than the affected person. So no one understands the issues that are affecting the rural people when they talk about water, or when the young people talk about their challenges with employment, with access to quality service delivery, education, health, and so on. So you are not involving them out of tokenism, just to have them there. You are involving them on the understanding that they are going to strengthen your public policies because they have an understanding. And also the concept of voter apathy must be used carefully, so that you don't communicate something differently. Sometimes people are not voting because they are beginning to get disillusioned. I've been voting, there's nothing's coming out. So voting is not a mechanical process. I'm voting with the hope that my material condition or my challenges will be addressed. Now, it just means that some people don't have a choices. They look at these parties, they listen to their messages. It's not convincing that it's going to address my problems. So what the political parties and the political leaders need to do is really to understand what are the challenges that are facing society. And when they are communicating the strategies, it must just be open statements. You see, you are convincing me to vote. I must believe in your message. For example, if you are saying, if you vote me, I will create jobs. At this stage of convincing politics, that statement is not enough. I want to see what exactly are you going to do to create jobs. If you are fixing the education system, I want to see whether you understand what are the challenges and what you are fixing. So it's just to be conscious that we are now in an era of convincing politics. You must convince people.
You must convince people, so it's not good enough to make statements for the sake of making statements. Now, Dr. Santos, let's talk about the role of social media and the way it has played, or the perception that it has played in promoting political engagement. We see young people having conversations online. They don't have to sit in a room where 200 of them can gather. Has it shaped the voter registration in Namibia this year?
I think so. I think very significantly, because with social media for young people is no longer just a tool of communication. It is a space where they live. That's where their sociality plays out. And the conversations that they have there, no matter how trivial they seem, sometimes they come across as jokes. Sometimes you see these clips that they post on social media which seem like they are trivial, or they don't really speak to these high-sounding ideas, but they communicate something about their passions, about the things that matter to them, and it is through those interactions that some kind of common will emerges, some kind of rallying point around which they find motivation to do something emerges. Yeah.
Naita, do you think that political parties have heeded to what Dr. Santos is saying? Have they really gotten the essence of what it means to communicate to this Gen Z generation, especially using social media? They don't need to be in a classroom, you know. They just need to meet and agree on some specific platform and then keep engaging. Have the political parties in Namibia taken advantage of this spectrum of way of communicating?
Lord, I would say that remains to be seen, because we are not seeing much yet. We are waiting for the manifestos. 27th of November is in nearly 2.5 months. And we are anxiously watching this space to see what is there to come. Because like Dr. Kudumo said, it's not just about making statements, it's about walking the talk and showing what is it that you're doing. At the moment, the Green Hydrogen Summit is currently going on here in Windhoek, or is being conducted in Windhoek. Last week we had, or the week before we had oil and gas. It's very much, we're waiting if they're going to talk to the issues that are critical in this country, and not, it's like Dr. Kudumo said, it's really not about making statements or having certain personalities. It's about the issues, and we're still waiting for those manifestos. We're still waiting for that engagement. So it remains to be seen. But 27th of November is around the corner. We are in the last quarter of the year nearly. I mean, September, October, November.
Boom, we are voting.
Yes.
Now, Doctor, you talked about the issue of not necessarily it might be voter apathy. We saw it in South Africa where, you know, over 11 million people didn't participate in voting, not because they didn't want to vote. I mean, largely majority of them had registered, but they were probably not just convinced. So if we find ourselves in a situation like that likely to happen in this country, God forbid, not that I want it to happen, what would that kind of message mean for Namibia?
Yeah, look, the issue is, in my view, politics is about inspiring and creating hope all the time, but not just creating that hope. That hope must be seen that is changing the lives of people. If that's what politics is all about, that it is about improving the material condition of people, then you will see people interested in it. But if people think they are just voting, nothing is changing, you are not even understanding the challenges that they are facing, then you have a problem. For example, like the question that you ask about the youth, you don't expect them to have time to go to rallies and stand the whole time there. Are we seeing enough in terms of you going to them and not them coming to you? What are the mechanisms that are in place? Because that is a big constituency in terms of this election. Firstly, is inspiring them, creating that hope, understanding their issues, and convincing them to go and vote. So you really, citizens in a democracy have rights and obligations. You don't really want the 91% not going to vote. But it is incumbent upon the political parties and the conditions to convince these people that they can vote for them, they can trust for them, they have strategies in addressing their issues. You really want your citizens to vote, but you don't want to be in a state where the citizens say, we've been voting all this time, nothing's changing. Or when I look at the people, what they are talking and what they can deliver, both in terms of competencies and skills, I don't see anyone there. And I decide not to vote. You must not call that apathy. I have consciously decided not to vote because voting is about choices, it's about alternatives. I did not find an alternative.
So it's a huge conversation, but we get to continue shortly after this break. Welcome Welcome back. Now is that opportunity where we give you an opportunity to contribute to the discussion. The number in studio is 061 291 3339, 061 291 3339. Now, as we are waiting for callers to contribute to this topic, Dr. Kudumo, you're talking about the issue that content of what is being said is also very important. Maybe it begs a question, do we actually have orators that are able to communicate what they want to achieve with regards especially to young people, or are we sending the correct people to go and speak to the electorates, or should we be sending anybody, or who should we be sending to go and communicate?
Yeah, I think that is a very critical question. The messenger and the message is important because society have evolved. You cannot just send anyone. The people that you are talking to must relate to you and must trust you. Therefore, you have to craft your message in such a way that it is convincing. And you must send someone who really understands the context in which they are campaigning. That's why we are worried that the manifestos are so late, because for purposes of analysis, we have to check, is the strategy, is the message correct? And then after that, who's the messenger who's delivering it? Remember, it's about hope, it's about trust. And if they cannot trust the person, they cannot trust the message. So in other words, everything that the political parties are doing must be considered and must be understanding the issues that people are actually, that are affecting people.
And Dr. Santos, maybe building on that, how can politicians build trust with the electorate, especially we had controversies concerning the last election, and obviously perhaps Namibia is also continuing to recover from that, but how can they collaborate and ensure that, you know, they instill a sense of trust in those that are hoping to depend on them for their vote?
I think pretty much the issues that Dr. Kudumo has been raising, sincerity around issues that matter to people. When people...
Doctor, I have to interrupt you. We have Jeff from Keetmanshoop. Jeff, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, what is your contribution tonight?
My contribution is I just want to compliment the three panelists there. I wish they were one of the president candidates for our country. When it comes to youth, they are spot on. The madam there, she's just spot on, because none of these all 20 or 21 political parties involved the youth in their structure. They don't even come so much to the youth. I mean, all of them, all parties. So I just want to say thank you, just to be so spot on for all three of you. Thank you. I wish you were candidates of one of the parties.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, that's a compliment. Perhaps maybe you guys will consider to go register to become independent candidates after this? Dr. Santos.
Yeah, gosh. You mean coming back to the issue? I was saying sincerity is really the name of the game. People have serious issues, and when they are going for elections, they want those issues to be addressed. And when politicians are interacting with the electorate, they must be sincere in their understanding of the issues and in their commitment to addressing those issues. They must have clear programs about how to address those particular issues. And once the electorate is convinced that these ideas and the programs that have been put in place to implement them will meet their needs, I think that trust gap can be reduced or even overcome.
Thank you, Doctor. We have any time from Tsumeb. Good evening and welcome to the program.
Good evening to you, and let me greet the panel there and the viewers out there.
Please proceed.
I'd like to share the same sentiments with the previous caller, Jeff. The role of politicians in promoting voting, I don't see much being done by politicians in promoting voting in this country. I just picked maybe one word from Dr. Kudumo, what he said. Once you approach the people out there, do they trust such a politician? That's the first question. Second, the people are not being approached prior the elections, prior the voting. Now, it's too late by this time, one, to say the role of politicians in promoting whatever voting. Most people need the awareness and the knowledge as to why do they need to vote. The critical issue is about the youth. The youth are the handful of this country whereby they need more education on it. They need the importance of voting. But are these youth, the question arises, are these youth now having a trust in politicians? One question. Number two, they've lost hope in voting with the reasons known by them and some of us. Like they are put aside, like the previous caller indicated, they are not involved in the decision making and in political parties so that they can have the voice there.
Okay.
So I don't know how we can address that question and solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anytime. The critical issues, continuous engagement, I think we are talking about it, that is very key. It goes beyond one form of election, so it must happen. And then obviously, again, confidence in the politicians that are being put at the forefront is coming out again. I mean, should we be worried that perhaps the ones also that are being put at the forefront in terms of these campaigns are not able to address the issues of young people, since they are saying that they are not included, the politicians are not going to them? And maybe adding on to that, Nita, is an issue of the influence of the economic struggle that we have right now on majority of the young people.
Please, just what is...
In terms of the participation, in terms of the ideal candidates that are being put there, the two callers are saying that, you know, perhaps there is no engagement, they are not going to them, they are not involved in conversations, they feel excluded. And maybe perhaps building on that is now the issue, do we think that the economic situation in this country, especially the issue of unemployment, not so long ago we heard that there are over 8,000 teachers who are employed who graduated with. We saw that one of the daily newspapers reporting that science and mathematics graduates are most struggling to find jobs. And these are mostly young people.
So your question is, how do politicians go to that specific topic of employment? It has a lot to do, our situation in Namibia has a lot to do with how do we prepare young people for the job market? Are we creating entrepreneurs? Are we creating young people that are able to create their own opportunities? So we would have to go back to the education system. And the question is, do political parties or do politicians understand we need to work together? Like at independence, we adopted an administration that where you had a certain caliber of people, where you had to bring Namibians into the system. So we had to set up administration. We had to train public administrators. So you could see in the 90s, a lot of young people studied public administration. And young people studied law. Young people then later studied medicine. But, and later the trend went into, we studied business management. And we keep evolving, and we need to keep working together to say, what is it that we want as a country? Green hydrogen, oil and gas, renewable energies are coming. Infrastructure needs to be built. We have lots and lots of teachers, but we're lacking people in other sectors. So our tertiary institutions, our VTCs, and our education systems, our Namibian Training Authority, Namibia Qualification Authority, the private sector, are we working, politicians, administrators, public administrators, are we working together to identify who do we need? Because right now these renewable energies, it creates a huge opportunities. And most of our parents, you know your own parents. If you're telling your parents you want to become an artist or an artisan, they're like, I'd rather become a doctor or a lawyer or this and that. We need to start looking at what is it that we want to build and focus in the country. What skills do we need? And we need to look at our neighboring countries. What are they doing right where they're employing people? You cannot just disregard people who have different talents. We need to pick up the young people where they are in their early youth. If you identify this young person as a sports person, this one is an artisan, this one can become a culinary artist, what is it that our private sector need? What is it that we can create? And it's a group effort once again, and we need to look at our education system and already create that opportunity early from grade 8 onwards, grade 10. We are not all going the same theoretical way. We are not all going into higher education. We need to build enough skilled labor so that we can not just have foreigners coming, especially now oil and gas, green hydrogen, renewable energy, and other sectors. You know, how many nurses did we fly in from Kenya, Ethiopia? How many experts do we need to bring in? We need to look seriously at our school system and build those talents so that we can really, that's where we are addressing unemployment. See, because opportunities don't come if you don't address it early on in your education system, and if we don't work in unison by identifying what we need and what we want, where we want to be in 10, 20, 30 years.
Okay. Before I allow Doctor to give you an opportunity, we have Abdul from Windhoek. Abdul, good evening.
Good evening, my brother. How are you doing?
I'm good. Please, what is your contribution tonight?
Thank you very much. Good evening to your listeners. First of all, I want to appreciate the ECN for their well sleepless on the time of the registration, and also to the Namibians, men and file of women, that also try their best and go and fulfill the mandate of their rights as a citizen of Namibia. Now you're questioning how to get these voters, these registration voters, our brothers and sisters, to go and vote for the candidate of their choices. First one, I want to appeal to the ruling party, especially my party as a voter. I want to encourage every citizen go out and vote. The reason is that when we have more populations in Namibia, it means that we have the economic, and it means that you as a citizen, you got a right to have that economic which is coming to Namibia when there will be a new government, which is a woman and a very good lady having more experience, that he knows what you as a voter want. And that is also something that we need to talk to every political parties, whereby you have to meet your voters and try to talk to them in a proper manner, in a serious dialogue, that between you as a candidate and those who are going to register to vote for you, there is always opportunity between two of you. And the opportunity is that, first of all, we need a peace of mind of Namibia. Then the other thing is the economic that is also growing. How we can try to infrastructure buildings, road network, educations, and then when we have sick, how our health, Ministry of Health can able to assist you on giving you, whether it can be free medical aid or a little on payment. Oh. And then we also have what we call business people want to do business. Oh. How, end of the day, you need these people, and these people also need you. So this is why I'm saying that when you, as a politician, you have to make sure reach every regions, districts, and every place of this country that you knows where those voters are living, and meet them and speak with them in a proper manner and a voice of peaceful, so that they will be able to go back as the way they register themselves to go and cast the vote. So it is everybody must play the rules of understanding on how to do the things the right way. Thank you very much for now.
Abdul, thank you very much. Now, Abdul, there perhaps mentioning very important things and building on what Naita was talking about. She talked about the issue of diversification, especially when it comes to the Namibian economy. We talk about, and there's this issue that I always have a problem with it, because we talk about economic growth and there's economic development. So the two are not necessarily the same thing, you know. The economy has grown after independence. Nita is talking about in terms of exclusion of activities. For the first time in terms of the National Development Plan, we are seeing a possibility of the inclusion of the arts sector in an NDP. Does it mean that Namibia is ready to transform and possibly allow other sectors that have not benefited from it in the past, and especially the areas that young people are likely to be involved in, Doctor?
Yeah, I think if we are seeing changes in NDP 6 in the development thereof, then it means there's a participatory process of policy making that people are involved. I think one thing that we need to understand about Namibia is the structure of the economy and the history where we are coming from. So it's not only a matter of mismatch between the skills and what is needed in industry. You must also look at the structure of the economy. What are the implications thereof on employment creation? So basically, if there are new issues that are coming in NDP 5, that's what you want, because you are speaking to the needs of the people. And I think we need just to clarify, what do we mean understanding the issues that are affecting people? And I will use myself as an example. When I was a student, I'm guaranteed a bursary from the Gavango administration. I'm guaranteed accommodation in the hostel. So my work is just to study. Not only me, everyone who was of my generation. And I was transported with a government bus to go to university and back. And during every holiday, I had a holiday work that the current generation of young people are not experiencing. So if you are a policymaker who aspires to govern, how are you resolving that complex problem that is evolving? If you look at public transport system in Windhoek, if you go to FNB and near Vernil Park there, people that stays deep in the informal settlement are still waiting for transport to get to their homes. And they must get up at 3 o'clock. They work in town, and some of them don't have the money, they have to foot. So do you understand what it means to foot from the informal settlement to prosperity and to reach home at 10 o'clock? So how does your policy speak about public transport system? So these are the issues that we are talking about, that you really need to understand what are the issues and how you address it. And when you are developing policy, don't sit in Windhoek and develop that policy in isolation. Find a way of involving people. Then we will have good public policies, because they are informed by the challenges that people are experiencing.
Indeed, going back to what the last caller was talking about, engagement and engagement. Unfortunately, I wish we could continue discussing. We are running out of time. Dr. Santos, what would be your parting thoughts this evening?
I think just to underscore what really has been highlighted in the discussion, is that what's important really is to be in tune, for political parties to be in tune with what is affecting people, in particular young people, because they are the ones with a future that still has to unfold, and who also at the same time do not see much ahead. So there must be something on the table for them, and it must be sincere. It must be real. It must not just be rhetoric. It must be a tangible future that they can see, and programs that they can see translating into material effect.
Okay. Naita, briefly, your parting thoughts.
Briefly, inclusion. It touches on what Dr. Santos said. He said, be in tune. I would say be inclusive. Really, we have all the policies of inclusion. We ratified the policies to support youth, to support women, to support minorities, to support the different groups in societies. Let's be as inclusive as possible, because that's how we build a Namibian house.
And implement. Doctor?
By advice to political parties: don't assume. Go to the people, discuss, convince them to vote. When you have been voted in a public office, understand that it is about a service that you render to the public. It's not a job. It's a service. You come in that office, you render that service. When the time comes, you leave and another person comes in. One of our problems, we are making public office, political office, a job.
It is not a job, it's to serve in the interest of the people, or at least to attempt to ensure that your interests and theirs meet. Dr. Santos, Naita, Dr. Kudumo, thank you very much for making time to speak to us this evening.
Thank you very much.
And also thanks goes out to our colleague Peter Mgwale, who is our sign language interpreter for this evening. But before we sign off, we always leave you with an African proverb. Now, when the roots are deep, there is no reason to fear the wind. Meaning, this proverb highlights the importance of building a strong foundation. In this context, a deeply rooted democracy where citizens are informed, engaged, and motivated to participate in the electoral process. When politicians work to cultivate trust and active participation, the democratic process remains resilient, even in the face of challenges and uncertainties. Until next time, remember the tagline: situation critical, minds philosophical. Good night.